Thank you so much for joining us on our news desk on QTV and a very warm welcome. In our headlines, ZESCO declares end to load shedding. 6 Zambian students survive earthquake in Turkey. And Chief Chisunga commends government decentralization policy. And now the news in detail. ZESCO has announced the end of the less than 30 days load shedding in the country. ZESCO Managing Director Victor Mapani says that the country will no longer experience load shedding. Mr. Mapani says households and companies countrywide will now enjoy 24 hours of power supply without any disruptions, and the water levels are picking up in the Kariba Dam. He says that this has been necessitated by the various measures, which include restoration and upgrading of power generation at various power stations in the country. Mr. Mapani has disclosed at a media briefing in Lusaka that ZESCO has revamped the Victoria Falls power station, which is currently feeding about 20 megawatts into the national grid. He says ZESCO has also upgraded power generation at Kafue Gorge, upper and lower power stations by over 150 megawatts. Mr. Mapani adds that the utility company will soon increase power generation at Lake Kariba from the current 250 megawatts to 350. He said the anticipating upgrade is due to the increase in water levels in the Kariba Dam. Mr. Mapani adds that the government also plans to begin importation of about 120 megawatts from Mozambique once negotiations are completed.
As you might be aware, some of you are wondering, I think the load shedding effectively ended 12 days ago. But we are now sure that actually the load shedding is gone. At least we've gone over the cliff. We have noted that the waters are picking up in the Kariba, and also some other mitigations that we had to put in place. What did we do to get the load shedding off our back? We had 2 machines at Victoria Falls, which had been down for a period of close to 3 years. 2 of those machines were brought in consecutively end of last year and early this year. So that gave us a boost of 20 megawatts from Victoria Falls, meaning now Victoria Falls Power Station, as we sit here today, is operating at 100% of its installed capacity. And then we came through Kafue Basin, where we do have 3 power stations. We have the Iteji Power Company, whose installed capacity is 120. It was operating at a mere 80 megawatts during the difficult time of load shedding. That now has ramped up and is sitting close to 98, almost 100 megawatts, which means we are almost there. That has been a push. That's an additional 20 megawatts from Iteji. We go down to Kafue Gorge Power Station, the 990 megawatt installed capacity power station, which was operating at barely 800 or slightly below. But with the waters that you've noted and the floods along the Kafue Basin, that has ramped up to over 900 megawatts. So it means we've picked over 110 megawatts at Kafue Gorge.
6 Zambian students have survived an earthquake in Turkey which caused their apartment to collapse. Government is now evacuating the surviving students who were studying in southeastern Turkey after their apartment collapsed as a result of the 7.8 magnitude earthquake which hit that country and neighboring Syria. According to the Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency of Turkey, AFAD, more than 10,000 deaths have been recorded, while 40,000 people have been injured. The epicenter of the earthquake was in Gaziantep province of Turkey, and it affected the central parts of the country, including neighboring Syria. Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Minister Stanley Kakubo disclosed through a statement that no Zambian national has been reported to have died in the incident. Mr. Kakubo says the students who are on self-sponsorship at Diko University in Babikar are being evacuated by the Zambian embassy in Ankara, where they will temporarily be accommodated. He adds that the Zambian mission has continued to check on unknown Zambians in Gaziantep province and the surrounding provinces in the aftermath of the earthquake, and it will continue to closely monitor the situation. He notes that his ministry remains actively seized over the matter and will update the nation as as and when need arises. Mr. Kakugo charges that government of the Republic of Zambia has conveyed deepest condolences to the government and the people of the Republic of Turkey on the tragic loss of their lives, and they have expressed sadness at the destruction of property following the devastating earthquake. Chief Chisunga of the Oshi people in Mansa district in Wapula province has commended government for its plans to decentralize certain departments. Speaking when Minister of Green Economy and Environment Engineer Collins Nzovu paid a courtesy call on him at his palace, Chief Chisunga said he was happy with government's plans to decentralize the Zambian Environment Management Agency ZEMA by opening offices in Mansa district. He said it had been difficult to get to ZEMA as their nearest office was in Ndola. The traditional leader complained that Wapula had a lot of illegal manganese mining activities and the companies do not consider the damage they were doing to the environment. The chief also complained about understaffing in the forestry department, making it difficult to manage forest reserves. He said climate change had come and was real, and if people were not careful, they would regret in future. He further requested government to partner with traditional leaders in planting trees to protect the environment. Chief Chisunga encouraged households to plant orchards in their backyards so that they can derive benefits for fruits, citing mangoes and oranges as fruits to be planted. And Minister of Green Economy and Environment Collins Nzovu said chiefs were part and parcel of the governance system and were keepers of national resources. Mr. Nzovu thanked Chief Chisunga for his role in sensitizing people in his chiefdom on the effects of climate change and explained that the government wanted communities to participate through the Community Forest Management CFM groups. And Mr. Nzovu explained that the government was in the process of disposing of Mukula logs that were confiscated by the security wings and that which were illegally harvested. He also noted that unlike the past, where concession licenses were the preserve of a few communities were not able to participate. The Electoral Commission of Zambia has registered a provincial total of 564 voters in the month of January 2022, out of which 344 are male, while 220 are female. Corporate Affairs Manager Patricia Luhanga has disclosed this in a statement to Q News, saying Kasama recorded the highest number of registered voters in the month under review at 177, while Mansa recorded the least in 3. She says the second phase of the continuous registration of voters CRV exercise commenced on 16 January 2023. She notes that the first phase of the CRV started on 1st June 2022 and ended on 31st December 2022, and the provincial cumulative total number of registered voters during the first phase of the exercise was 13,553. She charged that the Commission has since embarked on the process of deduplicating of the data collected in the first phase of CRV. Police investigations team in Lusaka is investigating Isliod Traders Limited in connection with being in possession of properties reasonably suspected to be proceeds of crime. Deputy Police Public Relations Officer Dan Mwale says this is contrary to Section 71(1) of the Forfeiture of Proceeds of Crime Act number 19 of 2011, where Dalisolungu, age 35, of Kanakantapa area in Chongo district is one of the directors. Mr. Mwale says this morning at around 10 hours, Dalisolungu appeared before the investigations team in Lusaka, demanding the release of the seized assets which are currently under investigations. Mr. Mwale adds that Mr. Daliso was advised that the matter is still under investigations and that he will be communicated to as soon as investigations are concluded. The Zambia Institute of Architects ZIA has noted with concern the continued tragedies caused by flooding due to heavy rains. ZIA President Fidelis Kawiri says the institute is prepared to help finding holistic and lasting solutions to the annual problems if lives and infrastructure is to be preserved. Mr. Kawiri says this requires a concerted effort from all professionals in the built environment, as it is unacceptable for the nation to be facing the same problems yearly when professionals are available to provide solutions. He says that the collapse of buildings experienced across the country points to the sad reality of poor quality infrastructure due to a number of reasons, most of which are avoidable, adding that this should be a wake-up call for local authorities and government. He notes that there is need to ensure building guidelines are followed strictly on every construction project, and this starts with the use of registered architects to properly design and guide the process of building. He charged that the local authority have a duty to ensure that building plans are submitted for scrutiny before construction on site, and building under construction should be inspected to ensure conformity to the acceptable standards and should be certified fit for occupation after construction while taking into account all weather patterns. He has urged government through the Local Government Service Commission to increase capacity in local authorities, stating that the Institute has a good number of trained architects and other professionals currently unemployed and available to render a service. He observes that over the years, people have been permitted to build without adherence to standards using substandard materials and drawings done by non-professionals, resulting in infrastructure failure at the slightest exposure to inclement weather. Ruling United Party for National Development NMC Roderick Chewe has charged that the UPND government will be able to stabilize the prices of all commodities in the country after the fuel prices stabilize on the global market. Mr. Chewe says the current increased commodity prices in the country is as a result of skyrocketing fuel prices of fuel on the global market. He says there is need for the Zambian people to give enough time to the UPND government to implement their campaign manifesto. Mr. Chewe says the UPND government has so far already archived some of the campaign promises they made to the Zambian people whilst in opposition, such as the introduction of free education, the increment of the Constituency Development Fund and social cash transfer, and ending cadreism in public places. He says the UPND government has also brought unity in the country, but ending tribalism in the appointment of government positions.
No, why should we be intimidated by the opposition? Because we are implementing our manifesto. We promised free education, we have done it. We promised a better economy, we have actually increased CDF from 1.6 to 2.8.3 million. It's because we want to improve the lives of the people economically. Then the other thing that we are talking about, we are giving social cash transfer to the people who were denied that opportunity. What else? We have stopped cadreism. You remember the issue of cadreism was, was so in the flesh to many Zambians. That one has also been sorted out. What else? We are uniting the Zambian people. Look at our cabinet, well organized, well structured, where it has brought each and every tribe on board to be part of the running of the affairs of the Zambian people. So all these things must give confidence to the Zambian people to say it was just during Kaunda where someone can go to school free of charge. Okay? But under the UPND government, over 30 years from the time that we moved away from UNIP, UPND has brought these things back, and it is happening, where we are giving, schoolgoers bursaries, university and college students, they are on bursaries. What else do we need?
Professional Council of Zambia HPCZ is saddened by media reports of vulnerability of patients to non-health practitioners. HPCZ Public Relations Officer Terry Msonda says looking at the 2 cases that have been reported in the space of 2 weeks is disturbing for the council being a regulator. Mr. Msonda says the alleged raping of a patient by the security guard at UTH is a violation of the patient's right, as patients have the right to ensure that they receive reasonable and safe access to health services whenever they visit a health facility. Mr. Msonda notes that such acts should be condemned because apart from the competent practitioners, the care for patients is supposed to be supplemented by adults who are there as part of the support system. He adds that if support systems are the ones who are there to make the patient vulnerable, then it is uncalled for and should be condemned, adding that the council looks forward to the outcome of these cases in the courts of law.
And our appeal to the consumers of health services are that whenever they visit the health facility, they should ensure that they get the information from the right sources. Not everybody who is found in a clinic, in a hospital, be it private, public, is a practitioner. Yes, they may portray themselves to be a practitioner, but our appeal to the public is that they need to ensure that they get the information from the right sources. They have the right, for example, to ask, are they a doctor? Do they work from there? To an extent of even asking for their ID, I think that is correct, is within their right as patients. So it is sad reading, and we feel that the patient need more protection from the support system as opposed to what is obtaining or what has obtained in the past 3-4 weeks, where the trauma case and also the UTH incident.
Chongwe Municipal Council has received over 100 community projects from all the 21 wards for consideration in the 2023 Constituency Development Fund. A desk appraisal has since been conducted following the submissions of the make reviews, scrutinize and select projects to consider for field appraisal before submitting to the CDF committee. Chongwe Municipal Council Public Relations Officer Cecilia Mukonkera says currently the council has instituted the CDF field appraisal team to commence field appraisal for the community projects submitted by the ward development committees from the 21 wards of Chongwe constituency for consideration in the 2023 CDF implementation. Mrs. Mukonkela adds that the field appraisal exercise will allow for the CDF committee to appreciate ascertain the submissions made by the community before the projects are implemented. She says among the community projects submitted by some wards include construction of classroom blocks, clinics, footbridges, supply of water, electricity, among others.
So Chongwe Municipal Council wishes to inform the general public that we are in receipt of over 100 community project applications from all the 21 wards for consideration in the 2023 CDF. A desk appraisal has since been conducted following the submissions to make reviews, scrutinize, and select projects to consider for field appraisal before submitting to the CDF committee. Currently, the council has instituted the field appraisal team to commence field appraisals for the community projects submitted by all the WDCs from the 21 wards of Chongwe constituency for consideration in the 2023 CDF implementation. The field appraisal exercise will allow for the CDF committee to really appreciate as well as ascertain the submissions made by the communities before the projects are implemented. So among the community projects that have been submitted before the WDCs include the construction of classroom blocks, clinics, footbridges, supply of water and electricity.
A 12-year-old girl has allegedly been defiled in Kapirimposhi district of Central Province. Confirming the development to Zanis in an interview, Provincial Commissioner of Police David Mokuka said the minor was allegedly defiled by an unknown person at the Glass Grounds area in Kapirimposhi. Mr. Mokuka explained that the victim met her fate when she was sent back from school to go and get a necktie which she had forgotten at home. He explained that the victim was waylaid by the assailant as she walked home and dragged into the nearby bush, where he undressed her and had carnal knowledge of her on Monday around 8 hours. He said the suspect only stopped the act when an unknown man who was passing by disturbed him. He added that the Good Samaritan escorted the victim home and later the parents reported the matter to the police. The provincial police chief said investigations in the matter are ongoing and a manhunt for the suspect has been launched. Workers engaged by the Kesma Construction Company in Zimba district have reportedly gone on strike after going for 2 months without getting salaries. The 12 affected workers were contacted by Kesma Construction from Lusaka, which won the tender to build the wall fence and the visitors' shelter at Zimba Urban Local Court. The construction workers, who began work in November last year, have been working without pay for a period of 2 months, which resulted in them downing tools. The workers are demanding to be paid salaries for the month of December last year and January this year. Speaking on condition of anonymity, the workers disclosed that some of the friends at the construction firm had their contracts terminated under unclear circumstances. The situation is said to have affected security guards at the construction site, who have also reportedly gone for 2 months without a salary. The workers said they would only go back to work after they had been paid for 2 months' salary arrears. Efforts by Zanis News Crew to get a comment from Kesma Construction Company Managing Director Michael Suakiki over the matter proved futile by press time as his mobile phone went unanswered. But Zimba District Labour Officer Amina Zimba, in a separate interview with Zanis, regretted the development of over non-payment of salary arrears. Zimba said government will not allow contractors, both local and foreign, to frustrate and abuse labour laws. She said she would summon Kesma construction authorities over the matter.
Volodymyr Zelensky is in Brussels with leaders of the EU's 27 member states at their special summit on the situation in Ukraine. Before the discussions, the prime ministers, presidents and bloc's most senior representatives warmly welcomed the Ukrainian president on his second trip outside his country since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion. Before the summit, Mr. Zelensky addressed the European Parliament.
Ukrainian European way of life намагаються знищити.
The Russians are trying to destroy the Ukrainian and European way of life with total war. But for what? To destroy the Ukrainian and European way of life? We'll not allow this. For each of all 27 elements of the European way of life, 27 countries of the European Union, this total war which Russia has unleashed is not only for territory in one or another part of Europe. Its threat lies only in the fact that there's a dictator with a massive stockpile of Soviet weapons and supporting weapons from other dictatorships, in particular from the Iranian regime. To be able to wage this war, the Kremlin absolutely, cynically, consistently, step by step, year by year, destroy what we see as the basis of our Europe with you.
Over to our Brussels correspondent, Jack Parrick. Jack, what stood out for you in that speech by the Ukrainian president?
Well, it was an impassioned speech in the European Parliament. It went down extremely well. There was huge cheers, actually, even as he was walking into the hemicycle of the European Parliament. But that was expected. I think the members of the European Parliament, we knew that they would respond to him in that way. But what's happened since is that he's moved here to the European Council, where on the same day, the 27 leaders of the European Union are meeting. And he gave a joint press conference with Ursula von der Leyen and with Charles Michel, the European Council President, and she being the European Commission President, demanding that actually talks for Ukraine's membership of the European Union begin before the end of this year. President Zelensky being here is very symbolic, but also he wanted action during this visit.
What about what Ukraine needs in this war against Russia? What about the sticking point of fighter jets?
Well, this has been the big talking point, especially over the last couple of weeks. Since European partners allowed Leopard 2 and other tanks to be exported or re-exported into Ukraine, the Germans had a block on re-exportation of tanks that were made in Germany. They have now released that. Ever since that's been opened, the discussion and the pressure from Kyiv, the government, is asking for fighter jets. Now, Zelensky comes here off the back of a visit to the United Kingdom, where the Brits said that they would accept, that they would train fighter pilots, but what they need as well is those fighter jets. Obviously, that door having been opened with the tanks is one thing, but there is reluctance in the big EU capitals, specifically France and Germany, in Berlin and Paris, to sending more fighter jets over a number of concerns. Firstly, what that will mean, the escalation of the war, but also what it means for their own domestic national security.
Let's have a listen to the message the European Commission President had. I want to ask you about that in a second.
We all heard the urgency of your call to support Ukraine now. You spoke in a very moving manner about and praising the European way of life. And you added that Ukrainians want to come home to this European way of life. And indeed, today, you see we are one family, we have one vision, and family members help each other. You can count on us. We will continue to provide our full support, now to sustain your people through this atrocious war and for the future.
So all the right signals being sent there when we look at what Ukraine needs, but can Kyiv rely on Brussels for what it does actually need at the end of the day when it comes to munitions and weapons?
Well, what the European Union would say is yes. They say that they're providing lots and lots of money, that the process for Ukraine to join the European Union is underway and moving quicker than possible. But the decision on the weapons is down with the individual member states of the European Union. As I was saying, France and Germany being probably the biggest players in that. What was interesting is that Ursula von der Leyen announced that they will put now forward a 10th round of sanctions, that they will sanction senior political and military leadership, that they will also look at other exports to try and hit the Russian economy further, to try and twist the arm of Vladimir Putin to bring the invasion to an end. But so far, the 9 rounds of sanctions that have been imposed haven't worked. I think what's interesting is this process into EU accession, and the symbolism of this meeting is really, really important. Zelensky's visit here, because Ukraine isn't only fighting to become independent of Russia. The vision of the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian authority is not just a turn away from the Kremlin, but a turn towards Brussels, a turn towards the European Union. They want to be a member of this club.
So, Jack, what else can we expect from today's summit?
Well, an interesting thing, Ben, is this February summit that we're in right now was meant to be all about the European Union sorting out its migration, working out how it can deal with additional flows of migrants coming in across the Mediterranean and through the Western Balkan routes. Zelensky's visit has really hard thrown it in a different direction, but the leaders are resuming their meetings as we speak, and we'll be talking about that very thorny internal EU issue.